Welcome back. Let's begin.
In the days of King Ahab of Israel, a union was made that would alter the course of a nation. From the coast of Phoenicia came a princess, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Sidonians. Her name was Jezebel. She arrived not as a quiet bride, but as a force of will, carrying with her the gods of her homeland, the customs of her people, and an ambition that would find fertile ground in the passivity of a king. Jezebel did not bring only herself to Israel. She brought 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophetesses of Asherah. Under her influence, King Ahab built a temple to Baal in Samaria and erected an altar within it. Those who served the God of Israel were not welcome in the land. Jezebel moved to cut off the prophets of God, and Obadiah, a man who feared God greatly, hid 100 of them in caves, 50 by 50, and provided them with bread and water. The spiritual landscape of Israel was changing. The altars of God were broken down. The voice of God's prophets was being silenced, or so it seemed. After 3 years of drought that had gripped the land, the prophet Elijah called all Israel and the prophets of Baal to Mount Carmel. The challenge was simple: 2 altars, 2 offerings, and the God who answered by fire, he would be God. From morning until noon, the prophets of Baal cried out, leaping around their altar, but there was no voice. No one answered. No fire fell. Then Elijah repaired the altar of God that had been torn down. He arranged the wood, he laid the offering upon it, and at his request, water was poured over everything, not once, but 3 times, until the trench overflowed. Then he prayed, not loudly, not with spectacle. He spoke to God simply and asked that the people would know who their God truly was. The fire of God fell. It consumed the burnt offering, the wood, the stones, the soil, and even the water in the trench. When all the people saw it, they fell on their faces and cried out, "The Lord, He is God! The Lord, He is God!" When Jezebel heard what Elijah had done, how he had confronted her prophets, and how the people had turned, she sent a messenger to Elijah with a warning. She swore that by the following day his life would be like the lives of those her prophets had lost. Elijah heard the threat, and he was afraid. He rose and fled south into the wilderness, and when he could go no further, he sat beneath a juniper tree and asked that his life might be taken. He was a man who had just witnessed the power of God on a mountain, and now he sat in the desert, overwhelmed, unable to go on. But he was not left alone. An angel touched him and said, "Arise and eat." Beside him was bread baked over coals and a jar of water. He ate, he slept. The angel came again a second time and said, "Arise and eat, for the journey is too great for you." Strengthened by that food, he walked for 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mountain of God. Even in his fear and exhaustion, he was sustained. He was not abandoned. Near the palace of King Ahab in Jezreel was a vineyard belonging to a man named Naboth. Ahab desired it. He wished to use it as a vegetable garden and offered to buy it or exchange it for another plot of land. But Naboth refused. The land was his family's inheritance, passed down through generations according to the law of God. It was not his to sell. Ahab returned home resentful. He lay on his bed, turned his face away, and refused to eat. Jezebel came to him and asked what troubled him. When Ahab explained, she told him to arise, to eat, and to be at ease. She would obtain the vineyard for him. She wrote letters in Ahab's name, sealed them with his seal, and sent them to the elders and nobles of Jezreel. The letters instructed them to proclaim a fast, seat Naboth in a place of prominence among the people, and then bring forward 2 men who would testify falsely against him, accusing him of cursing both God and king. The elders did as Jezebel had commanded. 2 men testified against Naboth before the people. He was taken outside the city and stoned. When Jezebel received word that Naboth was dead, she went to Ahab and told him to arise and take possession of the vineyard, for Naboth was no longer living. The word of God came to Elijah, "Go down to meet Ahab, king of Israel, who is in Samaria. He is now in Naboth's vineyard, where he has gone to take possession of it." When Ahab saw Elijah, he said to him, "Have you found me, my enemy?" Elijah answered, "I have found you, because you have sold yourself to do what is evil in the sight of God." And then Elijah spoke words of prophetic judgment over Ahab and his house, and specifically concerning Jezebel, he said, "The dogs shall eat Jezebel within the bounds of Jezreel." When Ahab heard these words, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and fasted. He lay in sackcloth and went about quietly. The words of the prophet had been spoken. The consequences had been named. Whether or not any of them believed it then, time would reveal all things. Years passed. Ahab had died in battle, as the word of God through Elijah had foretold. Elijah himself had been taken up, and the mantle of prophecy had passed to Elisha. Now Elisha sent a messenger with a flask of oil to Ramoth-Gilead to find a man named Jehu, a commander in the army of Israel. The young prophet poured the oil on Jehu's head and spoke the commission he had been given. Jehu was anointed king over Israel, and the instructions were clear. He was to strike down the house of Ahab, that through him the blood of God's servants might be avenged. When his fellow commanders heard what the prophet had said, each of them quickly took his garment and spread it under Jehu on the bare steps. They blew the ram's horn and declared, "Jehu is king." When word reached Jezreel that Jehu had come, Jezebel heard it. She painted her eyes, arranged her hair, and looked out through the window, composed and defiant. Even in the face of what was coming, she carried herself as a queen. As Jehu entered through the gate, she called down to him. Jehu looked up and called to those at the window, "Who is on my side?" And 2 or 3 officials looked down at him. He said to them, "Throw her down." The servants acted. And when those who were sent to bury her came, they found that the word which Elijah the prophet had spoken had been fulfilled. Jehu said, "This is the word of God that he spoke by his servant Elijah the Tishbite." The prophecy, spoken years before in a stolen vineyard, had come to pass. The vineyard endures. The palace that coveted it is gone. The queen who seized it is gone. The prophets who were silenced, their words outlasted every decree and every seal of power that moved against them. This is not a story told to satisfy a thirst for justice or to revel in the downfall of the powerful. It is a record, faithful to what was written, of how power, when wielded without conscience, without reverence for what belongs to others and to God, carries within it the seed of its own unraveling. Jezebel was a queen. She was also a person who made choices, and those choices had consequences that reached far beyond her own life. The land endures. The word remains. And the question the story leaves with every generation who hears it is the same one Israel faced on Mount Carmel. How long will you waver between two opinions?
Thanks for watching. Same time next week. I'll see you there.